Good day from Seattle. We're continuing our legal blogging in 45 chapters. We're up to chapter 21 today, if you can believe that. We'll roll into the middle of July. It might even extend to the end of July with some additional things being added per folks' request. On Friday, we talked about using Feedly as a listening tool for blogging, with listening being critically important. Today, we're going to be talking about Twitter as a listening tool. And the reason we're talking about listening is you can't blog in a vacuum. You have to blog within the concept of being in a room. Find the influencers, engage in that conversation. They're going to hear you, they're going to see you, they're going to cite you, and your influence is going to grow as a result, not only by virtue of people beginning to cite and share what you blog about, and those are the influencers with the greatest following, but also people that are doing research on your background are going to see you because they're going to see that you're cited by these people and that you're part of this conversation. It's no different than if you were invited to a leading conference on a particular niche subject. Your potential clients would see you as having spoke there by virtue of Googling your name. It's the same thing here. So trying to blog by putting up eloquent content that demonstrates that you're brilliant, and brilliance tends to be a commodity in professional fields, and going down the highway separate from where people are gathering and they're listening in this room where the busy intersection is, if you will, is not going to get you as far as if you're listening. So what is Twitter as a listening tool? Some people look at Twitter and they just follow a bunch of people and they look at it as noise after a while, and they go, what can you really get out of Twitter? And really what they're saying is, I don't know how to use Twitter. I haven't been able to figure it out. That's a better way of putting it than to say it doesn't work because it's just a river going by. There's no question it's a river of information going by. That's how Twitter is. You're going to see information go by as if you're standing on the side of a stream. And you're only going to get that information when you fish something out of the stream, when you see it go by. So you have to make constructive use of Twitter as a listening tool, at least in my opinion, for it to work. If the number of people you follow is relatively small, that might be one thing. If it's a greater number, which it tends to be after a while, you're going to find interesting things. You're going to have to harness that information so you can listen a little bit. And I think there's a couple ways you can do so. One is by having a Twitter list. A Twitter list is your ability to say, okay, these are the people that I'm following that have a particular expertise, that have a particular following in a field. And so I'm going to create a list of those people. It might also be people that you haven't followed before, and you're going to go out and create a list of new people. There was one night years ago where I said, boy, could I create a Twitter list of people that are covering the law as reporters, traditional reporters. 2.5 or 3 hours later, I had a heck of a list of people from coast to coast, of people that were using Twitter that I could put in a list, and that they were journalists covering courtrooms. And it was fascinating. Now, I did that by Googling journalists, Twitter list. I would find people that were journalists covering the law, see who they were following, because then it's like being able to say, okay, those must be the good people. I'll look at them and I'll put them on a Twitter list. Now, what does a Twitter list do for you? These are Twitter lists that I have. Let's go back to the list. On a myriad of subjects that I've tested over the years. So if I want to see who is tweeting in the African legal community, I can create an African legal list. Now, why would anybody want to do that? Well, for me, it's interesting because is there an opportunity for LexBlog to expand its business in Africa? Well, Africa's a long way away, especially during a pandemic. Well, I can follow people that are sharing information regarding legal technology, legal publishing, all of those issues which are of interest to me and my company. And by sharing some of their information so that they see it, because I think some of what they're sharing is interesting, the stories they're sharing, they're going to see me and I'm going to meet them. I have another list marked, bar and legal associations. Why do I have that? Well, that's so I can build relationships with bar associations across the country. So if I go in and mark somebody to add them to a Twitter list, I can tweet what they're sharing and build relationships with those bar associations. It's the same thing for blogging. If you have a particular interest, let's say in cannabis law or marks in the apparel industry, I can then I can then reference what they're writing, because they're going to share oftentimes what they're writing or what they're seeing. Me blogging that in a way where I'm aggregating information with my blog. I'm referencing something that I've read, I've cited this leading source, and I provided my take. That's a good blog post, not just because of the information you shared with people, but more importantly because you've now entered that busy intersection where the thought leaders are located. And if you weren't using a listening device to see what they were saying, you never would see that otherwise. So Twitter lists are very powerful, way underutilized. You just don't hear of people talking about them. And I think the reason is oftentimes people are mostly concerned about how do I broadcast my information out to people to make sure they hear it, or how can I get people to come and see me, via search engine optimization and one another tactic to get seen. And those are all fine, but it's a different approach when you're trying to establish yourself as a thought leader by engaging other thought leaders. And Twitter in this case is a great way to do so. So play around with lists. All you have to do to create a list is to look, at people you might be following, and in the corner, I'm using an iPad, but you're going to see it on your desktop. It's going to say, add a person to a list. And I can just click a button and say, add the person to a list. Up come my list, and I can just click a list, and they'll be in that list from that point on. And then what it allows me to do is just scroll down whenever I want to. So as a blogger, think of it as two ways, that Twitter list. One, that you're going to get information on which to blog, and you can reference the thought leaders. Two, you can build an audience of relationships so that when you blog, they're going to share the things that you share. And what I mean by that is, if I'm sharing items from Twitter, and I'm giving an attribute, or I'm commenting on a retweet with a comment so that they see me and I fall into favor with them, they might be more likely to share the items that I'm blogging about. So over the years, by me sharing other people's items on Twitter, not my things, but things that interested me and that I thought other people with similar interest might have an interest in, I built a nice following. That way, when I blogged something, I saw a lot of other people share my post because I had this goodwill built up. I had this social media equity built up. So you're getting information to blog, but you're also building an influencer network of people that are going to share your blog posts that are in turn going to grow your audience. The other thing to do is just to set up an alert for certain people. So if I was looking at Jason, who writes on social justice issues and legal technology issues, and I said, set up an alert for Jason, be a little bell, and it would say, send up an alert for all tweets that he puts out. Then what's going to happen is on Twitter, across the top, any tweets that come out from the people I've set up an alert for, I'm going to see it. So on here, you're seeing the New York Times, Jack Newton, John Mayer. There's certain people that I want to see. Now, it doesn't bother me to see those people on an ongoing basis. It's just an alert. And so during the day on my screen, something is going to bubble up. I'm going to see it. And you can easily do that. And so what you're doing there is just saying, okay, these might be the real movers and shakers on something that I particularly want to follow. So it's the same thing, you're just pulling it up in a different type of way. The last way that you can do it is just to follow along with Twitter on particular subjects. And Twitter gets smarter as to what your interest might be. So I have a section that comes up occasionally as the law. I don't use it that much. So when I do a search and it comes up for legal, I don't use it that much because it tends to be very broad. So if I'm going to use anything, I'm going to use lists. And I'm going to use lists to build relationships, and I'm going to use lists to get information. The alerts do come up during the day. because if somebody like Jack Newton shares something, it usually tends to be pretty interesting as far as what his thoughts might be on a subject. He might be doing an interview with somebody. It could be anything. The New York Times is going to keep me abreast of the news. If I want to stay abreast of certain things in open law, John Meyer is going to be an interesting party. I have an interest in social justice issues, so I've been following equal justice for a long time. I've been following the Marshall Project on legal rights in the law and social justice issues. So those things are of interest to me. So that's how I use Twitter. So the Y is for listening. List, just go and if you don't know how to do them, just Google list. How do I set them up on YouTube? Alerts, do the same thing. If you don't know how to use them, set that up. Firehose, tweets going by, I think is a little bit too difficult to make Twitter use as a listening device. So that's basically it. So you've got your news aggregator in Feedly for listening. You've got Twitter for listening. That's it for today, other than mentioning Blog for Good. Blog for Good campaign continues to go on, and as I mentioned on Friday, it's expanded. So it's not just the pandemic and social justice issues, it's all topics. So for those bar associations that are participating, all of their members get a 20 by LexBlog, which is a professional turnkey blog solution that provides lawyers everything that they need to be successful for blogging. It's the same solution that I'm using and that we're making improvements on during the course of this week. And those lawyers get it for free. So they're getting everything that LexBlog offers for free, no cost. For those lawyers that are not in participating bar associations, they're getting 20 for $39 a month. And that's less than you could be getting a business solution for blogging at WordPress. Why are we doing this? Because at this day, there's never been a greater need for legal insight and commentary, and it should come from lawyers. It shouldn't come just randomly, and it needs to come quickly. We're not going to have people collect articles and gather them at bar associations. No matter how well-intentioned it is, you can't get the volume of information that's being published by blogging lawyers in this country in that type of fashion. You can't get the amount of information from lawyers in your state by reaching out to them and saying, we'd like information on this, we'd like information on that. We've got a fire hose coming through from blogs, and we want to aggregate and curate that by state and by locale. And for those lawyers that are blogging on old platforms, we'll get them on a new platform. For those lawyers that aren't blogging, we'll show them how to do so. It doesn't have to be complicated. You can do something as simple as looking at information that your state is gathering and better organize it. You can be coming up with FAQs, and that's a good blog post. What does this mean? What is this? What is that? A great blog post for the public can be 2 paragraphs long. It is not writing some long story. So blogging can be very easy. And the Blog for Good campaign, which lawyers and bar associations from coast to coast are participating in, is a great way to be able to help the public today, whether they're consumers, corporations, in-house counsel, government agencies, or other lawyers. So we look forward to hearing from more and more lawyers like we are every day right now. And we'll continue the legal blogging 45 chapters tomorrow. Have a good day.